two companies have the same setup, what would give one an advantage over the other?
One of the major differentiators here is
what should the CRM team own and what should the analytics team own and how can they work together? What strategic CRM leaders do that more traditional campaign operators miss?
that customer intelligence isn't about collecting more data. It's about
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. I'm joined by Priyanshi Gupta, CRM Marketing Manager at Dover Saddlery. She's joined us today to have a conversation about CRM and how it's evolving.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me today.
Priyanshi, the first question that we have for you is understanding the customer actually means today for CRM teams in a data-first world, there's so much data and we lead with data. What do you think understanding the customer means today?
I've understood that one thing that we need to stop asking as CRM is who our customers actually are and trying to understand what our customers actually want from us right now. Like what are they trying to accomplish? In what stage are they in? Once we understand that, we would definitely and automatically reach to a stage where we would also identify our customers. For example, let's say for my company, it's like Dover Saddlery is a horse sport company. It deals with all the needs of horses and equestrians. So if a person has been buying stuff related to horse riding and competitions, but they suddenly stop doing that and, start buying some other stuff or, stuff for their kids or something like that. We need to understand why that's happening. What's the reason why that's happening? And once we understand the situation of our customers, for example, now that they have kids or, they have changed their lifestyle or something like that. So just trying to understand our customer behavior better and then, taking actions, building campaigns and, setting up different journeys for the customers in that manner is a shift that I have observed. Another lesson I would say I learned is that customer intelligence isn't about collecting more data. It's about connecting data across systems to build a complete customer view. And I would say in CRM, I've worked with customer profiles with combined purchase history, email engagement, SMS activity, and website behavior. That unified view allowed us to personalize journeys instead of sending the same campaign to everyone. Sometimes I would say the biggest improvement didn't come from, sending more emails. It's about sending lesser, but to a targeted audience in a better manner.
Yeah. If everybody has the same advanced technology, I'd love to hear from you on what you think the like differences that so let's say two companies have the same setup.
Right.
What would give one an advantage over the other?
So I feel one of the major differentiators here is the analytics that the companies perform using that particular platform. For example, currently I'm using the one of the CDP platforms, which is Algonomy 360, and I'm also using ListTrack for my emails and campaign execution. And the biggest impact came from is how we actually analyze our customer behavior. We build audiences based on lifecycle stages that our customers are in. We understood what their purchasing patterns are, how their engagement level looks like, and just trying to test new and different things on the platform and trying to understand what works for us as a company and what wouldn't work for us, and just making a switch and a shift to the things that are working better for us using that platform. Technology enables CRM, according to me. Analytics makes it more effective.
I'd be curious. My next question is really around like before a CRM team is able to personalize anything, I'd be curious your take on like what they should be checking on, what they should be confirming and looking into to make sure that their data and their information is actually ready to be acted upon.
Yeah, so when we're talking about personalization, it's really important to understand what our customer database actually looks like. Whenever we are personalizing content, the first thing that we should check is what our endpoint should look like. What are our expectations from any campaign or any
Hmm.
execution that we are doing. So once we have an established business goal, it helps us strategize better. It helps
Yeah.
us pick and choose our audience in a better manner. For example, if I want to run a post-purchase journey, or if I want the customers to make a second purchase, so I would have to make a personalized audience based on who are all the customers who have actually made a purchase or have bought something
Yeah.
recently, right?
Yeah.
Lastly, I would just add on personalization doesn't just start with the creative content. It
Hmm.
actually starts with, the customer trust in your data.
Yeah.
If our data isn't right, the experience won't be either, right?
Yeah.
So having the right data and understanding it in the right manner and then using it to execute our strategies helps personalization better.
My question to you is, knowing that they both of those teams share a common goal, but they're approaching it from two different angles, what's your take on the best way for those teams to work together? What should the CRM team own, and what should the
Mhm.
analytics team own, and how can they work together to just make sure everything works smoothly?
The best CRM strategies happen when analytics and CRM stop thinking themselves as separate functions and they come together and partner in working towards the same business outcome. Of course, their jobs, their work can be different, but once there is collaboration that has happened between the two, they both understand from each other's point of view. Working towards our goal becomes so much easier. Analytics would identify an opportunity, whereas CRM would directly act on it. So both the things go hand in hand, I believe.
Hmm.
Campaign results, for example, campaign results, they would generate new data, and those learnings would feed our analytics team. They would analyze the data and then provide us as CRM. They would provide us with the insights and the feedback that we can work on and strategize better. So that continuous cycle, just helps us improve our customer engagement, our customer behavior, and uh, we don't treat our campaign as an isolated event, then it's an ongoing process. I think alignment also starts with different KPIs. For example, I would just say if analytics is measured on a dashboard accuracy, CRM is actually measured on email open rates. So, what I mean by this is that if both teams are focused on customer retention, customer lifetime value, repeat purchases, or incremental revenue, they would begin, making their decisions together instead of focusing on their own goals. Um, Analytics gives you insights, CRM delivers the experience. So
Yeah.
business growth actually happens when the two of those teams work together and collaborate more efficiently.
Any thoughts on that as a sort of a comparison between more traditional segmentation practices and using behavioral signals?
Sure. So behavioral segmentation is something, that really helps as companies understand where our customers are in their life cycle based on, their behaviors, their browsing history, how their interaction is with our brand, and how we can
Yeah.
actually use that interaction to convert something meaningful. Also talking about traditional segmentation, it also has an important role. Things have
Yeah.
actually evolved between traditional and behavioral segmentations a lot these days, but I
Hmm.
would still say that traditional segmentation also has an important role. Things like
Sure.
geography, customer type, or loyalty status and purchase history are valuable because they provide context to
Yeah.
what we are looking for. But those always don't tell you what a customer actually intends to do next. So that's where the behavioral segmentation come into play. So just keeping ourselves updated on what their customer behavior is going to be and reacting on it as quickly as possible, really helps our possibility of conversion better as compared to reacting on it a day or a week later, because there's
Yeah.
a possibility their need would have been fulfilled by then.
Or if you have a thought or an opinion on what strategic CRM leaders do that more traditional campaign operators miss.
So one thing that I have observed in my previous roles, and I try to work on it here as well, is
Mm-hmm.
just being consistent and being observant with the campaigns that are actually running on. So
Mm-hmm.
just trying to observe that campaign at a closer end in order to understand if it's actually going to the right path or in the expected path or not. And if not, what changes or what improvements can we do immediately at that time so that we can perform better? So just
Mm-hmm.
constantly observing our numbers in context to our conversion rates, click-through rates, member engagement, rather than looking at the weekly report or looking at the monthly report or a bi-weekly report. I say, in my opinion, is something that really helps a person stand out. So just constantly observing and making changes as necessary.
And so, as you present internally, I'd love to get any advice from you that you have.
I'm sure. So one thing that I have learned so far is be as simple and as much you can communicate, that's better, because if I'm into the CRM position, I understand the words or the technical terms that we are using on our day-to-day basis. So just making them comfortable, trying to communicate my results in a manner that everyone in the room actually understands. And then, of course, if I'm presenting something or the results, capturing in visuals and tables rather than plain text, and having room for questions is my strategy, my way of presenting to the leadership,
Yeah.
making it as simple and as approachable as possible.
Well, thanks for the time. One last question to close us out. If you could give our viewers who are trying to do that with these types of systems, just one thing that they might be missing that they could examine and maybe find, that is just something you commonly see that people might have just forgot to check on, or something simple that people like forget about.
So one thing that I would suggest to all the marketers out there who are actually in the process of, sending emails out there and SMSs and direct mails is always check your emails before deploying them. Do a
Yeah,
thorough QA
yeah.
before actually sending them out to the customers, because sometimes a smallest mistake can actually, cost us much more than we can expect.
Priyanshi, on a Friday afternoon, you spent time with us sharing your
It has
expertise
been
and your
pleasure. It
yeah,
has been a
absolutely.
pleasure.
I've enjoyed it too. Thank you so much, viewers out
Thank you so
there.
much for your time.
It's our pleasure, and we hope to talk to you again someday soon.